What is going on, sportscaster? This is Goose Man, and I'm gonna do something not new, but I'm gonna do something. Just every week, I'm gonna do a week in review for the NFL. So we're gonna go dive right into it. We'll go to the Thursday night game, which is the game that started off the season. The Packers and the Bears. This game was excuse me, got a hangnail. Yeah, this game here was just a very boring game as the Packers beat the Bears 10-3 to open the season, NFL season off. This was just the defense. This was a defensive game. Trubisky played not very good for the Bears. Um, the Rodgers threw for 200 yards and Trubisky threw for 228. Trubisky had a rating of 62, and Rodgers actually had a rating of 91. So Rodgers played a little bit better. But Trubisky threw the interception, and Rodgers actually threw a touchdown with no interceptions. The running game for the Packers was non-existent. Jones had 39 yards rushing, 13 carries. And for the Bears, their running game was even worse, as Davis was the leading rusher with 19 yards of rushing. So this was a very defensive game, a very boring game actually. But the Packers were victorious 10-3. They started off the season 1-0. Bears fall to 0-1. Next thing we're going to go over is the Titans and the Browns. So the Browns came in with a lot of hype. Everybody expecting big things out of the Browns. For some reason, people want to crown them division champions. Well, they came out and they lost 43-13 to the Tennessee Titans, as the Browns got absolutely demolished. They just got absolutely demolished. As Baker Mayfield threw 3 interceptions. Nick Chubb did have 75 yards rushing for the Browns, but Beckham had 71 yards receiving, but just not a very good day. Mayfield was sacked 5 times, and the Titans just rolled over the Browns 43-13. As Mariota had 248 yards passing, 3 touchdown passes, and Henry had 84 yards rushing for the Titans, and he also scored 1, and he also caught a passing touchdown. So all in all, it was not a very good start for the Cleveland Browns. Like they had high hopes, and it all crashed. Not crashed the first week, but they got a big dose of reality in the first week that can't just be anointed division champs. You got to go and do it on the field. So Titans improved to 1-0, and the Browns 0-1. Next, we're going to go over is the Ravens and the Dolphins. The Dolphins came in. They were supposed to be not a very good team. Well, they made Lamar Jackson look very, very good. Lamar Jackson had 5 touchdown passes, and Baltimore beat Miami 59-10. So, Lamar Jackson had 5 touchdown passes. He actually had a great game passing, 17 out of 20, a passing rating of 158. Lamar Jackson looked very, very good Sunday afternoon against the Dolphins. Everybody talks about how Lamar Jackson looked good, how bad he looked in that playoff game, and will he be a quarterback that can lead the Ravens to the playoffs? Well, for one game, he showed that he could be a very good quarterback. As a 17 out of 20, that's good. So the Dolphins, Fitzpatrick, Fitzmagic, threw for $185, 14 out of 29, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. So Fitzmagic wasn't happening on Sunday, as the leading rusher was Drake. He had 12 yards rushing on 4 carries, and the Dolphins only had 21 yards rushing for the whole game. So they the experts said the Dolphins might not be good. Well, looks like they might not be, as Mark Ingram ran for 107 yards for the Ravens, and they ran for 265 yards as a team. So the Ravens came out and they played phenomenal. As Mark Ingram, big pickup for them in the offseason, and they proved to 1-0. And Dolphins 0-1. Next game we're going to go over is the Falcons and the Vikings. Falcons, another team, a lot of high hopes. Most of the people say, hey, the Falcons can contend for the NFC South title. I think they can. But for one game, their defense did not play well, as they made a lot of miscues. They had like 2 interceptions, a fumble, a block punt. So the Falcons just did not play well. They lost 28-12. They fell on 28-0 in this game against the Vikings, and they lost 28-12. 12. As going over the stats, I mean the Falcons actually I thought they moved the ball well at times, but then they turned the ball over, which really hurt them. As Matt Ryan was 33 out of 46 for 304 yards, 2 touchdown passes, but also has thrown 2 picks. He threw one in the end zone, which ended the scoring drive. Rushing, they only rushed for 73 yards on 17 carries, and they were behind a lot of the game, so they weren't able to establish a run. Now, the Vikings, on the other hand, the Vikings only threw the ball 10 times. They really didn't need to throw that much, as they ran the ball 38 times for 172 yards. If you look at overall stats, you say, oh man, the Vikings only had 269 total yards, and the Falcons 345. But the block punt on the opening drive, where the Vikings blocked a punt, and like I said, the Falcons they threw 2 interceptions and also fumbled once, and the Vikings scored on each one of those situations. The Vikings scored touchdowns, so that's why the Vikings were able to pull out that 28-12 victory, as they improved to 1-0, and the Falcons fell to 0-1. Next one we'll go over is the Bills and the Jets. This was a game where the Jets raced out to a 16-0 lead in the third quarter, and the Bills came back and they won 17-16. Yeah, so the Jets were up ahead 16-0, and they enabled the Bills to come back and win. As the Jets, Sam Darnold was 28 out of 41 for $175, 1 touchdown. They didn't run the ball that much, as they only had 21 carries for 68 yards. Maybe they should establish a run a little more. 41 times passing in the game, you're up 16-0. It just seems like, seems like to me, look at the stats, that the 41 passes, 21 rushes in the game is close. It should be closer. I think the rushes maybe should have been up close in the 30s, and the passing stats should be down in the low 30s. But credit to the Bills, as Josh Allen threw for 254 yards, 1 touchdown. He did throw 2 interceptions, but they ran the ball a little bit better. They ran for 128 yards on 25 carries. So the Bills, they win 17-16 as they overcome a 16-point deficit, and they defeat the New York Jets 17-16. So Buffalo goes to 1-0. Jets go to 0-1. Next game we're going to go over is the Redskins and the Eagles. This was the game where the Redskins raced out to a 17-0 lead. I mean, looked like, hey, man, maybe the Redskins are going to be better than people thought. And maybe the Eagles, pump the brakes a little bit. But look, Eagles came back at home, and they won the game 32-27 as they outscored the Redskins 14-0 in the third quarter and 11-7 in the fourth. So, NFL game with tail 2 halves. So it was 20-7 at halftime. The Redskins were leading over the Eagles, but the Eagles came back and they won 32-27 as the Redskins only scored 7 points in the second half compared to 25 for the Eagles. So that's why the Eagles were able to become victorious, because 2 halves. You can only use 2 halves. So Case Keenum was 30 for 44 for 380, 3 touchdown passes for the Redskins. So he played well, but the Redskins only ran 13 times for 28 yards. I mean, if you only rushing the ball 13 times a game, getting 28 yards, you're not going to win. You're not going to win many football games. I don't care how many passing yards you get. As going over to the Eagles, they were a little more balanced. They threw the ball 39 times and rushed for 31. That's a little more balanced. That's what you want. I think that's what NFL teams want to see. You can't be 50-50, like 31 passes, 31 passes, but you want to be close in proximity between rushes and passes. As Wentz threw for 313 yards, 3 touchdown passes, no interceptions, and they ran the ball for 31 times for 123. Their big rusher was Darren Sproles, 9 rushes, 47 yards, and Jordan Howard also had 6 rushes for 44 yards. And Deshaun Jackson had a great day for the Eagles, as he had 8 passes caught for 154 yards. So Eagles 1-0, Redskins 0-1. So next one we're going to go over is the Rams and the Carolina Panthers. Rams defending NFC champions. Panthers trying to get back to the playoffs, as they had a losing season last year. but the Rams became out victorious 30-27. This was a good game as the Panthers fought back. As excuse me, the Rams fought back because the Panthers were actually ahead the majority of the game in the fourth quarter. The Panthers led 23-13 in the fourth quarter, and the Rams actually came back and won this game 30-27. So, I apologize, but it was the Panthers that actually had to led most of the game, and the Rams came back and they won this game. The Rams, Jared Goff only threw for 186 yards, one touchdown, one pick, threw the ball 39 times, completed 23, and for the rushing, they ran 32 times for for 166 yards, or 5.2 yards per average carry. Gurley had 97 yards rushing for the Rams. So that's why the Rams were able to come back in the game, because they were able to run the ball more effectively. So, so it was 30-27. The Rams, 30-27. Trying to lead the call. And in the Panther stats, Cam Newton has 25 completions on 38 attempts. He threw no touchdowns. He did throw one interception. He threw for 239 yards. Now, they did run the ball very well, as McCaffrey ran for 19 carries for 128 yards, but he was the only guy that actually ran the ball for the Panthers. As the other guy, the only rusher was Armaya, and he only had one carry for 1 yard. So McCaffrey was it. It was either all or nothing, and he also caught the ball 10 times for 81 yards. So McCaffrey was a very effective Sunday in a losing effort. So Rams 1-0, Panthers 0-1. Next, we're going to go to the Chiefs, and I think they've Chiefs and the Jaguars. Yes, the Chiefs won 40-26. This game was barred with injuries, as the Chiefs lose Hill and Jacksonville lost Nick Foles for quite a while. I think he broke his collarbone, so he's going to be out for at least till October probably. So 40-26, Kansas City beats the Jacksonville Jaguars, as Pat Mahomes had another solid day for 378 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and McCoy had 81 yards rushing for the Kansas City Chiefs, and the big guy was Watkins. He had 198 yards receiving for the Chiefs. So all in all, it was a great offensive performance by the Chiefs. Now the Jaguars, Nick Foles was 5 for 8 before he got hurt. He threw that one touchdown pass. He got hurt on the touchdown pass. Then Minshew was 22 out of 25 with 2 touchdowns and 1 pick. So he actually didn't play that bad. Leonard Fournette had 13 rushes for 66 yards, and DJ Shark was the big catcher for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He had 4 catches for 146, and Connolly also had 6 for 97. So Jacksonville fell to 0-1, and the Chiefs 1-0. So that's what we're going to go over is the Colts and the Chargers. This was a game that went into overtime, as the Chargers were victorious 30-24 in overtime. As run in overtime to win 30-24. So this was a back and forth game as the Colts actually got 17-9, and it actually led 24-16 in the fourth quarter. Excuse me, backtrack. The Chargers led 24-9. The Colts were the ones that I read that. Yeah, so the Chargers led 24-9, and the Colts actually came back and tied this game up on the T.Y. Hilton touchdown pass from Jacoby Brissett. So Jacoby Brissett actually played very, very well. Everybody was talking about Andrew Luck being, gone. How will the Colts respond? Well, they responded very well, as they almost pulled out a victory on the road, as the Chargers win in overtime 30-24. Yeah, Jacoby Brissett actually had a good game, 21 out of 27 for 190, 2 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. And Mack was the big rusher for the Colts, as he ran for 174 yards. As a team, they ran for 203, did the Colts. And the Chargers, Phillip Rivers threw for 333 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Eckler ran for 58, Jackson ran for 57. So I guess they're going to probably do by committee, since Melvin Gordon is probably going to be not on the team. So it's going to probably be a committee for the Chargers, but it worked well as they ran for 21 carries for 165, 6 yards per rush. That's very, very good. And Allen was the big receiver for the Chargers. He caught for 123, 1 touchdown. Eckler also had 2 touchdown catches and 96 yards passing. So we only got a few more games left. We got the Bengals and the Seahawks. This was a game that, look, the Bengals were supposed to be a really bad team. I said they might go 0-16. Well, they hung with the Seahawks, and the Seahawks eked out a 21-20 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. As Cincinnati actually led 17-14 going into the fourth quarter, but Seahawks scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter, and Bengals got a field goal. So that was how they won. As going over stats, as Andy Dalton had 418 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, but they only ran the ball 14 times for 34 yards for 2.4 yards per rush. So not getting it done on the ground for the Bengals. That's one of the reasons why they lost this game. But the Seahawks, no, they didn't do much better as they only ran the ball for 72 yards on 25 carries for 2.9 yards per rush. But Russell Wilson threw 2 touchdown passes and passed for 196 yards. So the Seahawks eked out a 21-20 victory at home against the Chargers. So 1-0 for the Seahawks and 0-1 for the Bengals. Next one we're going to go over is the Cowboys and the Giants. Cowboys came out. They looked very, very good, especially on offense. They won 35-17 as Dak Prescott just looked awesome. I mean, he threw the ball 32 times for 405 yards, 4 touchdowns. They only ran the ball 30 times for 89 yards for 3.0 yards per rush, but they threw the ball very, very well, as they had 2 guys over 100 yards receiving. You had Gallup and Cooper. Now, going over the Giants, Eli Manning did throw the ball for 306 yards for 1 touchdown. Saquon Barkley had 11 carries for 120, but their defense really let them down as it was wide open receivers for the Cowboys all night long. And just a great offensive performance by Dallas. Very, very, very impressed with Dak Prescott and his passing. He did very, very well. Next game we're going over is the Lions and the Cardinals. This was a very good game. This was a very entertaining game. The Lions actually had a lead in this game, looked like they were going to win, but Kyler Murray and the Cardinals came back in the fourth quarter because they were down 24-6 in the fourth quarter, and the Cardinals came back and tied this game up with 43 seconds left when Kyler Murray threw to Larry Fitzgerald, and it went in overtime and ended up in a 27-27 tie. As both teams kicked the field goal in overtime and ended in a 27-27 tie. But you got to be, if you're a Cardinal fan, you really have to be impressed with the poise Kyler Murray had. He had a rough first half. His rating was really, really down low, like in the 30s, but he actually played very well, brought this team back, and they tied this game as he threw for 308 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Did Kyler Murray. And Larry Fitzgerald had 113 yards receiving and 1 touchdown. And the Lions, Matt Stafford had 385 yards rushing, 385 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And the Lions ran the ball for 116 yards on 32 carries. So look, the Lions were well in control of this game, and they blew it. They blew a game that they probably should have won. You up 24-6 in the fourth quarter. You probably should win the football game, but hats off to the Cardinals. They came back and they tied this game up as a very, very great. Well, I know you don't want to say great tie is great, but given the circumstances of you got a rookie quarterback, you're at home, you're down 24-6. A tie is probably a best case scenario for the Cardinals. The next one we're going to go over is the 49ers and the Buccaneers. 49ers won this game 31-17 as Jameis Winston threw 3 interceptions, 194 yards. So that was really, really the stat of the game was the turnovers for Tampa Bay. As Garoppolo only threw to say if you look at the 49ers stats, Garoppolo only threw the ball for 166 yards, and the Niners only ran for 98 yards. But 3 interceptions really doomed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. as 3 interceptions. You're not going to win many games. We need to throw 3 interceptions. As both teams had interception returns for touchdowns. As Vernon Hargreaves had one for the Buccaneers, and then Richard Sherman had one for the 49ers, and also Witherspoon had one for the 49ers. So you had 3 defensive touchdowns in this game, 2 by the 49ers, 1 by the Buccaneers. So both offenses had a lot to work on, but 49ers improved to 1-0, and Buccaneers fell to 0-1. Next game, we're going to go over the Sunday night game where the New England Patriots blew out the Pittsburgh Steelers 33-3. Tom Brady looked like he was 20 years old out there again. As Brady threw for 341 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He spread the ball. He spread the ball around like he always does. Tom Brady just looked like he was 20 years old out there as they just destroyed the Steelers 33-3. As Roethlisberger passed the ball for 276 yards, no touchdowns, and 1 interception. And Steelers only ran the ball 32 yards on 13 carries. They were behind most of the game, so they were unable to establish any kind of run game. So look, New England looks good, and they're going to only get better with Antonio Brown. So 1-0 for the Patriots, 0-1 for the Steelers. And once Antonio Brown gets there, that's going to make their offense even more dynamic. Next thing we're going to go over is the Raiders and the Broncos. Raiders had all the offseason drama with Antonio Brown. How would they respond? Well, they responded very, very well. They beat the Broncos 24-16. The game that really wasn't that close. It really wasn't that close. As the Denver Broncos scored a late touchdown, like 2 minutes left. So the Raiders really came out and they just dominated this game. Very, very impressed with the Raiders. As Derek Carr had 259 yards passing, 1 touchdown, no picks. Williams was the big receiver for the Raiders as he had 6 catches for 105 yards. They ran the ball 28 times for 98 yards. So all that was a great performance by the Raiders. They played very, very well. Flacco threw for 268 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks, and they ran the ball 23 times for 95 yards. But Broncos, they couldn't convert. They got field goals down there and not touchdowns. That was really the telltale stat of the game was the Broncos were getting field goals, not touchdowns. So NFL's like that, man. You move in between the 20s, you can hold somebody, get a field goal. You can win a lot of football games because 7's more than 3. So 1-0 for the Raiders, 0-1 for the Broncos. And the last game to go over is the Saints and the Texans. This was probably the game of the week as the Saints won 30-28 as Will Lutz hit a 59-yard field goal as time expired to propel the Saints to victory when the game would look like they were going to lose because they got down 14-3 and the Saints offense was not looking good at all in the first half. But the second half they opened up as they scored 27 points in the second half compared to the 14 for the Texans. But this was a very, very entertaining game as both defenses really had problems against the pass and also the rush. Both teams did not do very well against the rush or the pass. As we'll go over the stats, you'll see why. Deshaun Watson had 268 yards at passing, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And the Texans ran for 180 yards, 7.8 yards per rush. That is just phenomenal average. I mean, you average 7.8 yards a rush. You expect to win the football game. Hopkins had 8 catches for 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. Hopkins played well. He did have some drops, but Hopkins there's a reason why he's one of the top receivers in the league, if not the top receiver. So Watson had a great game. He also rushed the ball 4 times for 40 yards and ran in the end zone for the game's first touchdown. So, and next we're going to go over the Saints stats. Is Drew Brees, 370 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 big interception in the red zone when the Saints were driving on the second drive of the game. They're in the goal-to-go situation. It was a bad pass by Drew Brees. Saints left points on the board in that drive. As it turned out in a close game, those points were key because it kept the Texans in the game. If the Saints would score a touchdown there, the game would have been different, especially late in the game. But credit for the Texans because they made a play on that. As looking over the rushing stats, now the Saints ran the ball very well too, 21 carries for 148 yards, 7.0 yards per rush. As I mean, both teams defensively had a horrible time defending the pass and defending the run. So both teams on defense have a lot to work out, especially both teams do. As Saints had two receivers over 100 yards, Thomas had 123, and Teddy Ginn had 101. So look, Saints did what they had to do. NFL is all about wins and losses. And it's not like college where there's rankings and you can be ranked higher than me and blah, blah, blah. In NFL, it's wins and losses. Most wins get you in the playoffs and home field advantage and yada, yada, yada. Doesn't matter about 1 point, 2 points, 20 points, 30 points. Doesn't matter in the NFL. So Saints improved to 1-0. Texans fell to 0-1. That was probably the best game of the weekend. So exciting weekend. Week one is up. Week one is done. So week two is coming up. The Thursday night game is going to be the Buccaneers and the Panthers. So week two will be coming up very, very shortly, as Thursday night games will be going on all year long. So, all right, guys, have a great Tuesday, and I'll talk to you guys next time.